The emergency alarms had stopped 3 hours ago. Now there was only silence and darkness. Park pulled himself through the cold corridor of Station 7. His magnetic boots made clicking sounds on the metal floor with each slow step. The air was thin and hard to breathe. His helmet had a crack in it, and his breath made fog on the inside of the visor. They had left him behind. The crew, the alien species who had hired him as an engineer, had run away when the main reactor started to fail. 47 crew members had escaped in the emergency ships. 47 beings had looked at the only human on the station and decided he was not worth saving. Captain had called him an expendable asset when he first got the job, had thought it was a mistake in translation. Maybe the alien meant something else. Maybe the words did not mean what they seemed to mean. He was wrong. The words meant exactly what they seemed to mean. The station made loud groaning sounds around him. The metal was tired and stressed. The whole place was dying slowly. 7 was a mining station at the edge of known space. It was too important to leave empty, but too expensive to fix properly. The consortium had built it 200 years ago. Since then, they had only done small repairs when things broke. They never fixed the real problems. That was why they hired. Humans had only learned to travel faster than light 40 years ago. They were new to space. They were desperate for work. They would take dangerous jobs that other species refused. They were good with machines. And best of all, if something bad happened to them, nobody important would ask questions. Reached the engineering deck. The door would not open automatically because there was no power. He had to use his hands to force it open. His arms burned from the effort. His muscles screamed at him to stop. But he did not stop. He pushed until the door finally moved. Inside, red emergency lights made everything look like blood. The main reactor was visible through a large window. It was a huge ball of crystal and energy, but now it was dark and dead. Around it, smaller systems were breaking one by one. Sparks flew. Machines made dying sounds. Checked his calculations. He had maybe 6 hours before the life support stopped working completely. Maybe 4 hours before the outer part of the station broke apart from the stress. Any normal person would find a quiet corner. They would sit down. They would think about their life. They would wait for death. Park was not a normal person. He was an engineer. Engineers did not wait for death. Engineers fix things. He cracked his knuckles. The sound was loud in the empty station. He pulled up the emergency plans on his small wrist computer. The screen was cracked but still working. He read the information quickly, his eyes moving fast across the words and diagrams. The situation was bad, very bad, but bad was not the same as impossible. Started walking through the station, looking for anything useful. He found broken equipment in storage rooms. He found tools that other engineers had thrown away. He found cables and wires and metal pieces that they considered garbage. He did not see garbage, he saw possibility. They had a very specific way of building things. Every part had one job. Every piece was made in special factories to exact measurements. If something broke, you needed an exact replacement from those same factories. There was no other way. That was the rule. Humans did not follow that rule. Humans had a different philosophy. If something broke, you fixed it with whatever you had. You used tape. You used wire. You used creativity. You used stubbornness. Gathered parts from 7 different systems across the station. He carried them back to the reactor room. His arms were tired. His back hurt. His lungs struggled with the thin air, but he kept working. The emergency manual said he needed a special device called a Type 7 resonance stabilizer to restart the reactor. The station did not have one. The nearest replacement was 3 weeks away by cargo ship. By that time would be frozen and dead. But he had found 3 smaller stabilizers. He had found a broken gravity machine. He had found 40 meters of cable that someone had marked as too damaged to use. Looked at the cable and smiled. "You are not too damaged," he said out loud. His voice sounded strange in the empty station. "Nothing is too damaged. You just need someone stubborn enough to make you work." He started connecting things together. He cut wires with his teeth when his tools were too big. He welded metal pieces with a small torch he had found in a forgotten storage room. He talked to the machines as he worked, encouraging them like they were old friends. The first time he tried to restart the reactor, it failed. Nothing happened. The second time, electricity shot through his body and threw him across the room. He lay on the floor for several minutes, shaking and coughing. The third time, the reactor made a strange sound that hurt his teeth and made his vision go blurry. But it still did not start. Stood up, his whole body was in pain. His hands were burned. His head was pounding. Any sensible person would give up now. He tried a fourth time. The reactor hummed, it coughed, it stuttered. Then it caught like a fire finally finding fuel. The lights flickered on. The air started flowing again. Life support was working. Fell against the wall. He laughed until tears ran down his face. The sound of his laughter echoed through the empty corridors of the station. He was not dying today. But this was just the beginning. The station was still falling apart. There were holes in the walls. There were leaks in the air system. The communication equipment was completely destroyed. Closed his eyes for a moment. He let himself rest. Then he opened his eyes again. There was more work to do. Slept for 4 hours on the cold floor of the engineering room. He woke up with pain in every part of his body. His muscles were sore. His burned hands throbbed. His head felt heavy and slow. But he was alive. That was what mattered. He ate the emergency food he had collected from different parts of the station. The food was dry and tasteless, made to last for years without going bad. It was not enjoyable, but it gave him energy. He drank water from the emergency supply. Then he stood up and looked around. The reactor was still running. The sound it made was rough and uneven, not the smooth hum that the engineers had designed. It sounded like a sick animal trying to breathe, but it was working. That was enough. Now needed to fix everything else. He made a list in his head. The outer ring of the station had structural damage. 3 sections had air leaks. The communication system was completely destroyed. The water recycling unit was barely functioning. The heating system worked in some areas but not others. It was a lot of work for one person, but had no choice. There was nobody else. He started with the air leaks. These were the most dangerous. If the station lost too much air, he would suffocate. He walked through every corridor, listening for the quiet hissing sound that meant air was escaping into space. He found the first leak in Section 7. There was a small crack in the wall where 2 metal plates met. The crack was only a few centimeters long, but air was rushing out through it. Over time, this small leak would drain the whole station. Did not have proper repair materials. The repair kits required special compounds that hardened in a specific way. He did not have those compounds. But he had metal from other walls. He had welding tools. He had his own hands. He cut a piece of metal from a wall in an empty storage room. He shaped it carefully to match the damaged area. Then he welded it in place, running the hot torch along every edge until the metal fused together. When he was done, he checked for leaks by listening and by feeling with his fingers. The air stopped escaping. The repair was ugly but effective. He did the same thing for the other leaks. Each repair took hours. Each one required him to find materials, shape them, and weld them carefully. By the time he finished, his hands were covered in burns and small cuts. His suit was dirty with metal dust and grease. But the station was no longer bleeding air into space. Next, he worked on the structural damage. The outer ring had twisted during the reactor failure. Some sections were bent at strange angles. The doors would not open properly. The floors were uneven. Could not completely fix this kind of damage. It would require heavy equipment and teams of workers. but he could make it stable. He could stop it from getting worse. He found support beams in the cargo area. He dragged them through the station, one at a time, his muscles screaming with effort. He placed them against the twisted sections, creating new supports that held the damaged areas in place. He welded them firmly to the walls and floors. It was not pretty. An engineer would be horrified by how it looked, but it worked. On the second day, found something useful in a forgotten maintenance closet. It was a small repair drone about the size of a dog. The drone was old and broken. They had marked it for disposal years ago. Its outer shell was scratched and dented. One of its arms was missing. Its movement systems made grinding sounds. Any normal person would leave it in the closet. It was clearly useless. Carried it back to the engineering room. He spent 6 hours taking it apart and putting it back together. He replaced the missing arm with a tool attachment from a broken machine. He rewired its control systems so it would follow simple voice commands. He cleaned the grinding parts and added lubricant from the reactor maintenance supply. When he turned it on, the drone beeped uncertainly. Its single-camera eye looked at him with what seemed like confusion. "Hello, little friend," said. "Do you want to help me fix this station?" The drone beeped again. It was not really understanding him. It was just responding to sound. But somehow it felt like a conversation. "Good," said, "follow me." The drone rolled after him on its small wheels. It made quiet whirring sounds as it moved. When pointed at something and gave a command, it tried to help. Sometimes it did the wrong thing. Sometimes it got confused. But having another worker, even a simple machine, made the work feel less lonely. Named the drone. He knew it was just a machine. He knew it did not have feelings or thoughts, but talking to made him feel less alone in the empty station. By the end of the third day, 7 was working again. Not just surviving, but actually working. The air was clean and flowing. The temperature was stable. The structural damage was controlled. Power was running to all important systems. Checked the station's efficiency readings on his wrist computer. Before the evacuation under management, the station had operated at 67% efficiency. Now, with his repairs and modifications, it was running at 94%. He had made it better than it was before. Looked at his work. He saw the welded seams and the makeshift supports and the recycled parts holding everything together. It was ugly. It was rough. It broke every rule of engineering. But it worked. And now started thinking about what else he could improve. He had time. He had materials. He had ideas. Why stop at just surviving? The ship arrived 18 days after the evacuation. It was called the Righteous Prophet, a large vessel belonging to the consortium. The crew expected to find a dead station floating in space. They expected to find a dead human inside. Instead, they saw lights, bright lights shining from every window of 7. The station was not dead. It was alive. The communication system crackled. A human voice came through. "Vessel, this is Station 7. You are cleared for docking. Welcome back." The captain nearly choked on his own surprise. Was waiting in the docking bay when the ship connected to the station. He had cleaned himself as best as he could. His clothes were still stained and torn, but his face was calm. The drone rolled quietly behind him. The airlock opened. The first person to step out was not, she was human. Her name was. She worked for the consortium as a liaison, a person who helped communicate between humans and. She had tired eyes and the expression of someone who had seen too many difficult situations. She looked at the lights and the working equipment and the air that was fresh and clean. "You are supposed to be dead," she said. "I got better," replied. Behind, security officers spread out through the docking bay. They held weapons, though they seemed confused about what they were supposed to do with them. The station was not in danger. There was no enemy to fight. There was only one tired human and a small drone. Then Captain emerged from the ship. He was the same captain who had ordered the evacuation, the same one who had left behind without a second thought. His scales were pale, his eyes were wide, he looked like he was seeing a ghost. "This is impossible," said. "The reactor was failing. The structure was damaged beyond repair. Our calculations showed." "Your calculations were wrong," interrupted. His voice was calm but cold. "Your calculations assumed nobody would do anything. They assumed whoever was left behind would just sit in a corner and wait to die." He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I am human. We do not do that." The consortium sent inspectors to examine the station. They walked through every corridor, checking every repair, studying every modification. Their expressions changed as they saw what had done. One inspector, an engineer named, stopped in front of a power junction box. She stared at it for a long time. "This is wrong," she finally said. "You connected 3 different systems through one junction. These systems are not compatible. They should not work together." Shrugged, "They work now. I introduced them to each other. They became friends." "That is not how engineering works." "It is how my engineering works." Made a strange sound. It might have been frustration. It might have been something else. She wrote notes on her tablet and moved on. The inspection lasted 6 hours. When it was over, they gathered in the main control room to discuss what they had seen. Was not invited to this meeting. He was not important enough. He was just the human who had saved the station. Found him in the engineering room, sitting with. The little drone was charging from a power outlet. It made soft beeping sounds, like a sleeping animal. "You know what they are going to do," said. "The consortium will take credit for this. They will say their emergency systems worked as designed. They will say the station survived because of engineering. Your name will not appear in any report." "I know," said. "And you are okay with that?" Thought about the question. He looked around the engineering room at the machines he had fixed and the systems he had rebuilt. This was his work. This was his station now. Not officially, not legally, but in every way that mattered, it belonged to him. "They can have the credit," he said. "I want something else." "What do you want?" "A contract. A real contract with real protections. I want to stay here and keep improving the station." He paused. "And I want to hire more humans." Studied him for a moment. Her tired eyes showed something new. Respect, maybe, or curiosity. "The consortium will not like that," she said. "The consortium left me to die. I do not care what they like." Almost smiled. "You are very confident for someone who has no power in this situation." "I have power," said. "I saved their station. I made it better than they ever could. They know this. And they know that if they send me away, everything I built might fall apart." He leaned back in his chair. "I am not asking for much. Just a chance to keep working. A chance to bring more humans here. A chance to show what we can do." Was quiet for a long time. Then she nodded slowly. "I will speak to them," she said. "No promises, but I will speak to them." She walked toward the door, then stopped. She looked back at. "For what it is worth," she said, "I am glad you survived. Most people would have given up. Most people would have accepted their death." Smiled. This time the smile was real. "I am not most people," he said. "I am an engineer." 6 months passed. 7 was not the same station anymore. Had expanded everything. The docking area was 3 times larger now. He had built a trading post where travelers could buy supplies and sell goods. He had created a repair bay where damaged ships could be fixed quickly and cheaply. He had improved the living quarters until they were actually comfortable. And he was not alone anymore. 15 humans now worked on the station, had recruited them from the same labor exchanges that had brought him here. They were engineers, mechanics, computer experts, and builders. All of them had been called expendable by someone. All of them had something to prove. Was his second in command. She was a small woman with quick hands and a sharp mind. She had worked at a shipyard before, fixing vessels for low pay. One day she had corrected a senior engineer's math. She had been right. He had been wrong, but she was human and he was, so she was fired and blacklisted. Now she was helping run the most efficient station in the sector. The consortium rejected our proposal again, said, walking into his office. She was holding a tablet with the rejection notice on the screen. They say the atmospheric processor upgrade is outside standard operational parameters. When has that ever stopped us? Asked. Smiled, never. I'm just writing down their objections. That way, when we do the upgrade anyway and it works perfectly, we have proof that they tried to stop us. This was how things worked on 7 now. The humans would propose improvements. The consortium would reject them for various reasons. The humans would make the improvements anyway. The consortium would complain but could not argue with results. The station's efficiency was now at 112%. This number should have been impossible. The original design only allowed for 100%, but team had found ways to squeeze more performance from every system. Word had spread across this region of space. When something was broken beyond repair, when the engineers had given up, people came to 7. The humans would look at the problem. They would scratch their heads and argue with each other. Then they would fix it using methods that no manual had ever described. Some people called them miracle workers, did not like that term. Miracles suggested something magical and unexplainable. What they did was simple. They refused to accept that something could not be fixed. They kept trying until they found a solution. Han was the team's computer expert. She had the station's main computer to work faster and more efficiently. The operating system was old and slow, had added human programming techniques that made it run 3 times faster. Was their best welder. He could join any 2 pieces of metal together, no matter how different they were. His repairs were not beautiful, but they lasted forever. Was a life support specialist. She had redesigned the air recycling system until it produced air that was cleaner than on any station in the sector. Each human had their specialty. Each one had been rejected or ignored by the larger galactic community. On 7, they had found a place where their skills were valued. But not everyone was happy about their success. One day arrived on a supply ship. She looked more tired than usual. She asked to speak with Alone. They met in his office. It was a small room that had converted from a storage closet. There was a desk made from salvaged metal, a chair that he had repaired himself, and a window that looked out into space. There is going to be an audit, said. Her voice was serious. A real audit from the central authority, not the local inspectors, the people with real power. Frowned on what grounds? Take your choice. Safety violations for making changes without approval, labor law violations for how you hire workers, contract violations for the improvements you made without permission. She paused. They are looking for any reason to shut you down. Why now? We have been operating for 6 months. The station is more profitable than ever. Sat down heavily in the visitor chair. She looked old suddenly, older than her years. Because they are afraid, she said. The consortium has done things their way for 10,000 years. They have rules and procedures and standards. Everything is organized. Everything is predictable. Then humans appear, and suddenly the rules do not matter anymore. She looked at with tired eyes. You are proving that their whole system is based on arbitrary choices, that there are other ways to do things, better ways even. That terrifies them. Understood, they were not stupid. They were just stuck in their ways. For thousands of years, their methods had worked. Change was unnecessary. Change was dangerous. Change meant admitting that they had been wrong. Humans represented change, and change was frightening. When does the audit start? Asked. 3 weeks. 3 weeks, not much time, but maybe enough. Stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, ships were flying towards 7. People who needed help. People who had been told their problems could not be solved. "Then I have 3 weeks," he said, "to make this station too valuable to close." Raised her eyebrows. "What are you planning?" Turned back to face her. There was a fire in his eyes that had not been there before, the fire of a man who had been left to die and had refused. "Everything," he said. "I am planning everything." He called a meeting with his entire team that night. They gathered in the large cargo bay that served as their common area. 15 humans standing together, waiting to hear what their leader would say. Did not give a long speech. He explained the situation simply. The consortium wanted to shut them down. They had 3 weeks to make that impossible. "We have work to do," he said. "Let us get started." Nobody complained. Nobody asked if it was possible. They just got to work. The auditors arrived exactly on schedule. 3 high-ranking officials stepped off their ship with serious expressions on their faces. They had the authority to close 7 with a single report. They had come expecting to find problems. They found a transformation instead. In 3 weeks, and his team had worked without sleep. They had finished the atmospheric processor upgrade that the consortium had rejected 5 times. They had built a medical center that could treat 17 different species. They had started a training program for local ship crews who wanted to learn human repair techniques. They had signed trade agreements with 6 independent mining operations. They had expanded the trading post until it was the busiest marketplace in the sector. They had made 7 into something that could not be ignored. And they had documented everything. Every modification had records. Every improvement had data showing the results. Every credit earned and saved was tracked carefully. Every ship that had been repaired was listed with before and after reports. Every life saved by the new medical center was counted. The lead auditor was named. She was old with scales that had faded to pale gray. She spent 3 days walking through the station, reading documents, interviewing workers. She spoke very little and wrote many notes. On the 4th day, she asked to meet with alone. They sat in his office. The small room felt even smaller with her in it, were tall, and had to bend her neck to fit through the doorway. "You understand what I could do," said. Her voice was calm, without emotion. "1 report to Central Authority, 1 recommendation for closure. Everything you have built would be taken apart and sold for salvage." "I understand," said. "Then explain to me why I should not do this." Had prepared for this conversation. He had practiced arguments in his head. He had memorized data and statistics. He had planned what he would say word by word. But sitting here, looking at, he decided to speak simply instead. "Because you are tired," he said. "All of you are tired. 10,000 years of doing things the same way, and now your stations are getting old. Your systems are failing. Your civilization is slowing down, not because you are stupid. You are very intelligent, but you have forgotten something important." Said nothing. She just watched him with ancient eyes. "You have forgotten how to change," continued. "How to look at a broken thing and see not a problem but a possibility. How to try something new even when you are not sure it will work. How to fail and then try again." He leaned forward in his chair. "I am not trying to replace you. I am not saying humans are better than, we are just different. We think differently. We approach problems differently. And maybe that difference is exactly what you need right now." Was quiet for a long moment. The silence stretched out between them. "The Central Authority will never accept this," she finally said. "They do not have to accept it, they just have to allow it." Met her eyes directly. "Give us time. Give us space to work. Let us prove what we can do. If we fail, you can shut us down and feel good about your decision. And if you succeed, then maybe you will start asking humans for help. Maybe you will see us as partners instead of expendable workers. Maybe together, we can fix problems that neither of us could fix alone." Made a sound that might have been a laugh or a sigh. It was hard to tell with. "You are very bold for someone with no power," she said. "I have no official power," agreed. "But I have something else. I have results. I have a station that works better than any station in this sector. I have 15 humans who have done impossible things because nobody told them they could not." He gestured toward the window, toward the lights of the trading post and the ships docked in the expanded bay. "This is power," he said. "Not the power to give orders, the power to make things better, to solve problems, to build something that matters." Stood up slowly. She was very tall. She looked down at for a long moment. "I will think about what you have said," she told him. Then she left. The audit report came 1 week later. It was long and detailed. It listed every violation the team had made. It described every rule they had broken. It calculated every standard they had failed to meet. And at the end, it recommended conditional operational status, not approval, not endorsement, but permission to continue. It was enough. Months passed, then years. 7 grew larger and more important. More humans came to work there. Other stations in other systems started to copy what had done. They called them human stations, places where the rules were different, where innovation mattered more than procedure, where stubborn determination could solve any problem. One evening stood in the observation deck of his station. He watched ships arrive and depart. Traders, human engineers, travelers from a dozen different species, all of them coming to a place that should not exist, a place built by a man who should have died. Found him there. She was older now, with gray in her hair. She carried 2 cups of synthetic coffee. It tasted terrible, but they had grown to like it anyway. "Central Authority approved our latest expansion," she said, handing him a cup. "Conditionally, of course." "Of course," smiled. Everything was always conditional with the consortium, but conditional was good enough. The new engineers arrive next month, 32 of them, all human. "Good, we will need them." They stood together in silence, watching the stars. "Do you ever think about what would have happened?" asked. "If they had saved you during the evacuation, if you had escaped with everyone else?" Considered the question. He thought about the life he might have had, working on some other station, following someone else's orders, fixing problems the way he was told to fix them. "They did me a favor," he said finally, "leaving me behind. They showed me what I was capable of when nobody was watching, when there were no rules, when there was only me and a dying station and a choice." "What choice?" "To give up or to fight." He sipped his coffee. "I chose to fight, and I have been fighting ever since." Nodded. She understood. They all understood. Every human who worked on 7 had made the same choice at some point in their lives. The choice to keep going when everything said to stop. "What happens next?" asked. Looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there were more problems to solve, more stations to save, more people who needed help. The universe was very big and humans were just beginning to explore it. "Everything," he said, "everything we decide to do." The lights of 7 blazed against the darkness of space. A beacon, a promise, a reminder that sometimes the people who seem weakest are the strongest of all. In the decades that followed, 7 became a legend. The first of the human stations, the place where everything changed. The consortium never officially admitted what they owed to one stubborn engineer who had refused to die. But the humans remembered. They always remembered.